All right, folks, in this lesson, we are going to pick up where we left off on Friday with respect to graphing our polar equations. If you didn't get the opportunity to watch the video from Friday, I would go back and watch that one first, um, because again, this is kind of a continuation of that. Just as an aside, if you're having difficulty with the graphing calculator and the graphing calculator is giving you trouble, in the class notebook, in between pages 13 and 14, I put some directions with respect to graphing on the NSPIRE. So again, if you're having some difficulty, if you're having any kind of issues, that's a really good resource for doing any kind of troubleshooting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. We're going to talk about graphing in greater depth than what we did when we graphed in the last lesson, because if you notice that in this first example, we have here now this table that they want us to build. I'm going to go back to my NSPIRE. I'm going to open up a new document. And the first thing I want to make sure that I do is to check to make sure that my calculator settings are in radians, or sorry, degrees, and they're not, they're in radians here. So I'm going to have to go back home, change a few settings. So I'm going to go to choice 5, which is the settings. I'm going to go to choice 2, which is the document settings. And notice here that my angle is already in degrees. If yours isn't, you're going to want to fix it. And you should have the option here to set that as the default. I'm going to go back into my documents. I'm going to add a graph. And wow, that's frustrating because notice I'm still in radians. That was actually by design. If your calculator too is still in radians, we need to go into the graphing menu. And in the graphing menu, go to settings. And that graphing angle is the one that we want to change there and make it in degrees. So a couple different places you have to look to get that angle measure or angle setting set to degrees. And notice now I see the nice degrees up here. So we want that to be in degrees. I'm going to go ahead and hit the menu button again. This time I want choice 3, which is graph entry or edit. And within that menu, remember I want polar. And this equation that we are going to graph on page 19 says r equals 3 times the cosine of theta. So I'm going to go ahead and input that. Remember the theta button is behind the pi key down in the lower left-hand corner of your calculator. And then remember we have to change this domain. Our calculator is set to go in degrees. This is set for radians right now. So we want to change this to 360 degrees. And I am going to change the step to match what's given to us in the table. So if you look in the table on page 19, notice that these theta values go in increments of 30 degrees. I'm going to make that step go by 30s. I'm going to hit enter, and there's my nice circle with a diameter of 3. Beautiful. All right, now what I want to do is I want to go get some values to put in my table. And just like you've always done, you're going to hit Control T for the table. But when you pull that table up, notice that this table goes by ones. Notice that our table on page 19 goes in increments of 30. So what we want to do is we want to change some settings rather than scroll through 360 different lines of this table. This is really easy to do. We're going to go hit again the menu button. And within the menu button, we want choice 2, which is the table. And within this menu, we want to go to choice 5, which is edit the table settings. And you could start this table wherever you would like. I'm going to start it at 0 because my theta values on page 19 start at 0. I want to change the steps to go by 30s. And notice now my table matches exactly the table that you see on page 19 in your polar packet. So I'm going to go ahead and jot these values down off the table on my calculator and onto the table on page 19 in my packet. And I think it tells us to round these to the nearest tenth. And then just like we would do for any other graph, once we get the points in the table, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plot. So I've got 0 and 3, 30 and 2.6, remember that negative radius means reflect through the pole. So at 120, I'm going to reflect through the pole. 150, I'm also going to reflect through the pole. 180 is going to be a reflection through the pole, as is 210, 240, and it looks like I'm plotting points that are already there. And then when I get to 300, the 1.5 I had already reflected through the pole earlier. The value for 330, again, I had already reflected through the pole from earlier. And that value of 3 at 360 degrees has already been plotted as well. This is kind of hard to draw this on this screen, but you should be able to see on your calculator that the shape of this is a very nice round circle. Beautiful. Congratulations. You have just graphed using a table your very first polar equation. All right, I'm going to shoot on now to page 21, and we're going to do one more of these together, and then I'm going to set you free to work on your homework. So on page 21, again, we're looking for one decimal, only this time we're looking to graph a sine function, 2 minus 2 sine theta. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit Control T to get rid of this table. And then if you remember from yesterday, one of the hints or the little tricks that I gave you yesterday was just to keep going and hitting Control G and going back and editing the original equation. Oh, and that should say 360, not 260. So I'm just going to go back and edit the original function so that I don't have to keep changing the domain in the step. This equation also, they want us to graph in increments of 30. So again, notice the steps here in my table are going by increments of 30. If those went something different, then I would change that step here in my graphing calculator to reflect that. And for this equation, we get that nice heart-shaped figure. And you do need to know the names of these. The name of that figure is the cardioid. So I'll go ahead and write that in there. Maybe this one I'll make red for the cardioid for the heart. Again, to get into the table, I'm going to Control T. And once I'm in that table, I notice the annoying little increments of 1, which I really don't feel like scrolling all the way through. So again, I'm going to hit the menu button. Now that I've pulled up the menu, I'm going to go for option 2, which is the table. And I'm going to go in and pick choice 5, which is edit the table settings. And again, I want to start at 0 and go in increments of 30 or steps of 30. So now I've got exactly what I need, and I can go fill in that table on page 21 in my packet. And once I get that table filled in, now I'm good to go ahead and plot all of these points. Sorry, excuse me. And once I get my points plotted, then I'm set to go ahead and draw my shape. Oh, this is really hard to do on the laptop. Beautiful. So again, you should get the picture. Again, if you're having trouble and the calculator is getting really cranky and irritable with you, go look between pages 13 and 14 because there are a whole bunch of instructions there that should be a big help. And you folks are really good, much better with technology than us old people are. Um, so you should be able to troubleshoot. Your homework for tomorrow is going to be to draw the polar graphs on pages 20, 22, and 23. If you're having questions or if you have difficulties or if you just want to say hi, feel free to shoot me an email at any time. I would love to hear from you. Can't wait to see you back in action again. All right, take care, stay healthy. I hope to see each and every one of you soon. Bye for now.